Afternoon. Thank you very much, Janet, for the introduction. We're waiting for our distinguished panelists to join me here on the stage because they will do most of the heavy lifting. I have the easiest job here, although we got the after lunch slot. But we'll do our best to keep it entertained, and we could say we saved the best for last, which is a big call to have after all these panels before us. What I can tell you, it will not be about AI, so it's 5 HIs here, so human intelligence, and combined I think they have 150 years of deep learning among them. So use that wisely by tapping into that experience and knowledge that they have. We are here, and the theme for this year was humans and technology, how they can work together for safety. When we're looking at runway incursion, that's where a lot of humans come together. Some using fairly sophisticated technology, some perhaps not as sophisticated. And how are we making sure that our going forward is enabling this synergy between humans and technology with a very concrete application when it comes to mitigation of runway incursions. Runway incursions, if you want, it's a breakdown in situational awareness. We're not supposed to be at the wrong moment in the wrong time. So how we tackle this, again, by having the humans and the technology work together. And that's a point that we would like to explore. Also, when we're looking at safety data, at runway incursion, we see that it's somewhat flatlining in Europe in terms of the number of occurrences that we have. This is something that is mirrored some in other parts of the world. In Europe, we even see a decrease in the recent years in terms of the serious incidents. So the point is, well, why then we talk about runway incursion? Because things can change in the flip of a moment, and we got quite some stark reminders on how all the barriers can ultimately fail. Haneda is a great example in that sense, with all the damage and the cost that comes from such events. And we have another examples in the past where catastrophes were avoided at the very last moment that would have led to massive loss of life. So the fact that it's flatlining should not be seen that things are okay. We have learned to cope with it, with the current situation that we have. So why bother? Let's keep an eye, keep it like this, it looks okay. I think we need to ask ourselves why, since runway incursions, runway safety has been a safety priority for 20 years, we're still not being able to turn that curve no longer to be a flat line, but actually to improve. So we'll try to see how we can do something that is concrete and will lead to tangible advancement when it comes to that. We, of course, need to work together. It's a place where everything comes together, the airport, the ATC, the airlines. So it will require a multi-system, multidisciplinary approach for solution. That's why we have here panelists coming from different walks of life. Again, very experienced people. We start with Sascha, my dear colleague. It's an EASA veteran, 18 years with EASA. Have been in many places before and in EASA, in the ops side, airworthiness, dabbing with unmanned vehicles for a while. So quite a lot of experience, be it from the operational side in the industry, but also on the regulator. Janos Toth is joining us from Wizz Air, a pilot. So he is seeing the runways from the pointy part of the aircraft. Been in training, a very important element when it comes to maintaining safety in aviation. The importance of training, I think, cannot be underestimated and understated. Now becoming a safety manager for Wizz Air Hungary, so combining operational experience with a more systemic perspective. Francesco Bertaccini, again, a safety manager, a safety professional at his heart, but also banking on his experience in airline and in the airports now. Joining us from Milano airports, Milano Malpensa and Milano Linate. Grandis from DFS, INSP. Again, an ATCO at his heart, so he knows, he grew in the organization from the ground up, becoming now a safety manager. And yesterday we heard that Airbus has one of the best engineers, or the best engineers in the world, and the best flight test pilots. And I can tell you that that is true because we have one of them with us. Jan Profil is with us to bring the experience of what it means to bring technology from the drawing board to reality. As he was involved in the maturity process of quite innovative and safety-enhancing systems like synthetic vision systems, enhanced vision systems, HUDs that are now starting to become standard in many of the modern cockpits, and he's been heavily involved with the processes or with the programs of A380 and A350. So again, HI at its best, Homo sapiens Mark I, maybe version 1.5, I would say. There was some evolution in the past. But we are here to discuss about humans and technology working together. So I will start, and perhaps I would like to start a bit provocative, not before inviting you to take to the Slido. I think you've done a great job in using Slido, using technology to engage with the panelists, considering the involvement and the good questions we have seen coming from the audience for the previous panels. Normally, I have a deal. It's free coffee for the ones asking the first questions. I'm afraid coffee breaks are gone, so we have to come at the next EASA conference for that free coffee. But the deal is still there. So we count on you because half of a good panel is due to the good questions coming from the audience. And I know that you have questions and I know you have ideas. So please put those forward. We'll do our best to really engage with you and try to answer as many as possible. We will also not have PowerPoint presentations, so you really have to pay attention. And in terms of what we are talking here. And the first question, and it's kind of building on a question that was asked in the previous panel. It's about the human in the system. And again, when it comes to runway incursion, we have humans in the fire truck, we have humans in the cockpit, we have humans in the control towers, many of them that are active in an airport environment. Is perhaps, in your view, is the human the weakest link in the system?
Yeah, if I take this, if we're strictly talking about runway incursions, then the answer is most probably yes. And why? Because mainly the whole system still relies on humans. And at the end of the day, if you have a runway incursion, most of the time we'll be able to identify some human factor, human errors in these cases, in these occurrences. We might have at certain airports different barriers, protections, or we might not have at a smaller airport. Nothing at all. We only rely on pilots, air traffic controllers, and of course other airport staff. Or even if we have a well-equipped airport, those barriers, protections might not be operative on the certain day, on that specific day. So human factor will be an important element in runway incursions, just as in other areas and other occurrences. And we have to keep on our focus on this element and further strengthen these barriers, whatever steps we are taking, mitigations regarding this one. This should be remain under constant focus, and we should still work on this until, with some technology, whatever else, we can strengthen our current barriers even more to eliminate this human factor much more than where we are at the moment.
Thanks a lot, Janos. So don't leave the humans all alone. That's basically the message coming from the cockpit.
No, we try to not leave them alone, as I could tell from the ANSP perspective and as an EDCO myself. Of course, we rely on technology for a great part. We do research as well, but at the end, it's all about training as well. In our company, it's about enabling the people to make decisions and to trust their decisions at the end, and to have the trust also in their assisting systems. But at the end, I agree with you, Janos. The human is always the one that does the decision at the end nowadays. Yeah, and as we heard in the panels before, this will be the same for a long, long time, I guess. And there are many questions that are not yet made clear, really, about, let's say, as well. We are doing a lot of talks with the unions, of course, with trade unions of the ADCOs about these responsibilities that we heard already. And this is an issue that should not be underestimated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, from the manufacturer standpoint, looking at the latest incidents and accidents we got about runway incursions, it was all the time nearly 100% human factors. It's all about generally situation awareness or a mental picture which is not shared by two crews and ATC, or cruise ATC and a vehicle nearby. And so as a manufacturer, we were wondering what can we do to improve the situation awareness in a cockpit, and also what can we do to have a better sharing of the situation that is developing. And I will come later on the solutions, but already in most of the aircraft, we already have what we call airport navigation, so the display of the taxiways and the runways right in front of the pilot with a moving map, and that was a great enhancement to prevent runway incursion. But that wasn't enough, so we put warnings based on aircraft positioning. When we approach a runway, there is on most aircraft now a visual saying you're entering a runway. And we've got also the Honeywell RAS that tells you actually vocally that you're entering a runway, that you're on a runway. So we're putting a lot of barriers from the aircraft, but I know that at the airport level, there are so technical solutions to improve this situation awareness.
That's a great point and a good segue for Francesco, in the sense that everybody tries to help out in their own world, and how we make sure that everybody is indeed reaching out to the same outcome, to have the same picture as you aptly put it.
Yeah, we are as an airport. We are working constantly on the runway incursions, and we were able with an increase of movement, constant increase of movement in our airport, about 20% more in the last 10 years. We were able to reduce the number of runway incursions by 50%, 50. So, great result. We reached this objective by working in two ways. One is reactive, so reacting an event, for example, a tag by a handler that enters a runway that for chance at that moment was closed for maintenance. Fortunately, we got microwaves, and the microwaves on runway enter position were detecting the intruder and leading the ATC to immediately intercept the intruder, and the maintenance guys that were on site immediately could spot something was going wrong and intercepting the guy and escorting him out. But we went through training, which is one of the fundamental part of human behavior, how we behave, how we have been taught. And we completely rehearsed all the syllabus of training for driving in the airport, and we reduced the number of driving permits down to 50% again, because only who really need to be on runways and taxiway, and who every day use it, should have a permit. All the others can be escorted, but we reduce again the risk. And we also were supported by technology, because we introduced the GPS tracking for all vehicles going around into the airport. So we always know, our AOCC is always aware where the vehicles are. In case that something goes wrong, the traffic can be immediately stopped, and the situation rescue. We are also working on the proactive way, without waiting for something happen, which is the being part of GAPRI, so being part and acquire and trying to implement all the recommendations, 33 recommendations from the airport. And the last point is we are trying, with the help and support of a university, Politecnico di Torino, to reanalyze some of the events happened in the past using a new methodology called FRAM, which is the Functional Resonance Analysis method, which the analysis pointing out not the one case over 1,000 that goes wrong, but why every day things goes well. And the focal point is the human in this analysis that is able to switch from bad to well by his behavior. So we are using all these strategies, and we are seeing some results, positive results, I would say.
Thank you very much, Francesco. 50%, incredible. Keep up. I think it's worth continuing in what is really proving to work. We'll dive a bit more into the details of what led to this remarkable achievement. As a regulator, Sascha, are we on top of things? Do we have what it takes to enable all the solutions to be deployed?
But before that, maybe, what if we are always talking about the human being the weakest element in the loop? That's kind of a mantra that we hear. What if we turn this in a provocative way around? We don't know what we don't know. The good things in the FRAM is possibly a methodology that may help us better understand. What I mean is, maybe so many things have been prevented by human intervention at the last moment, but is not a reportable incident. So we don't know how many times human intelligence and human creativity may have prevented bad things from happening. We can measure the bad things from when they happen, but we have difficulties measuring the opposite side of that. Yeah, but to go back to your question, Eduard, are we regulators on top of things? Obviously, we are not currently, sorry to say, because otherwise we should not be observing a situation when, during COVID, the number of flights decreases substantially, whilst the total number of reportable runway incursion events flattens and does not decrease. And that is worrying, because in view of the predicted growth of aviation in the next years, the alarm bells should go off here. So we cannot afford to do nothing. We need to get better in tackling this issue. It's not new, as you mentioned. We have it in our top 20 EPAS risks, but we have to put our heads together as a regulator, or as regulators, speaking for all the European regulators, what we can do better in the future in order to take stock of good work that has been already done. You mentioned the GAPRI, which is a good document to give a start, but we shouldn't put it in a shelf to collect dust. It's questionable now what is the implementation rate of all the 120 recommendations that are contained in here. We now have the missing volume with kind of the guidance material that is being given to it. So there have been, I think, 200 bright people putting their heads together from 80 organizations worldwide working on this, and we don't need to redo this. We now have to act on it, and I think here it is a strong call also, including us as regulators. It doesn't mean necessarily regulations by all means or only, right? We have other tools. We have safety promotion. We have research activities, research tasks. So it can be a combination of this, but all in all, I think we are not there where we want to be.
Right, and I would like to pick up on some of the points made. First, I think, yes, the weakest link, it will be unfair to put that label on the human in the system. It's certainly not the case. But we all acknowledge, or you all acknowledge, that there's limitation coming from our own humanity to cope with the complexity of the operating environment. But to ask the question that was alluded already, are we measuring the right thing by only focusing on occurrences? We have a pretty good picture of what went wrong and perhaps why it went wrong, but we don't really know why it's going well so many other times. You're mentioning, Francesco, how about in the other domains, in the world of operations and air traffic? do we have a better understanding, and we are looking for this type of answers in terms of also what works well?
I can add something from the airport point of view. We recently we need some data and then to be analyzed for that. And for example, we just installed new CCTV all around the airport, which are supported by AI. Sorry for the word. From the AI, and it can detect and record some event, near miss, or standard operations. By using the engine under this event, probably something in this direction can be acquired. More data can be acquired and available for an analysis.
So we need to mine data somewhat differently.
Even if you set this word AI again, but in fact, if we try to look at all those things that went well, as you said, Sascha and Francesco as well, I mean, this is a lot of data then. We just have to cope with this massive data, and somebody has to look at this, and maybe this is one of the use cases for AI in the future as well, even if we are not sure. We're just, in my company, we're just starting now, beginning to do use cases for using these technologies for sorting events and something, but this is in the very beginning, and I think it is crucial, because if we just look at the things that go wrong, it's not the reality that we look at. It's just a very little part of the reality. It's like what someone told me. I told you that story, that if you like to learn something about marriage and you study marriage, you should not look only on those cases of divorce.
Okay.
So,
yeah, these are all very interesting questions, and from operator point of view, would be very, very difficult. Although we just heard some good examples how this can be introduced, but at the moment the whole system, maybe starting even from the regulation, is set up like that. We are measuring those events and the things did not go well. What we are doing at Wizz, or at least to say some positive news, in our safety communications, we are always try to highlight positive safety promotion as well. So whenever we have reports when crew exercised excellent situation awareness or excellent skills, we are trying to promote these events as well. So not only those when something went wrong, and of course others can learn from it, but we are trying to also highlight these situations or these events when our crew saved the day, and basically others can adopt these practices as well. They can also learn about this, and actually this has maybe it's a better message in overall, a more positive message towards the crew community, not only just highlighting the things which did not go well.
Now to follow up on this discussion and also perhaps to continue in that direction, how can then we help all those humans that have this challenging task to navigate through this complexity, also factoring in the point that was just mentioned before the lunch break, that we're going to collectively have an increasingly more challenging time to get enough of them in the system for a variety of reasons. So I think we have to help them out better, not only from a pure safety perspective, but just a matter of global efficiency. So with that in mind, what technology solutions from your respective technical fields show the most promise? And maybe something to continue in this in this vein, we have many barriers in many domains. Every one of you can name quite a good number of barriers, be it on the ground, in the control towers, in the cockpit, training, and so on. Could it be that we have too many, and everybody is thinking that somebody else will save the day? And we are missing, in a way, in having a global safety approach, an end-to-end safety approach, looking at the barriers in one breath, and we're slicing the cake in too many slices, and we're missing the big picture.
Well, again, from the manufacturer, from just the aircraft, we're trying to, at Airbus at least, we're trying to improve the the situation awareness of the pilots, because we all know that the taxi is one of the stress situation for the pilots. First, to taxi around a big airport, and secondly, to pick correctly the taxi clearance when there's a lot of radio traffic. So at the moment, we're working on a way to upload the taxi clearance and to display it right in front of the pilot. Because most of the time when you get a close call to a runway incursion, it's because the pilots are just lost on the airport and they think they are clear to cross or whatever. So they probably picked the wrong taxi clearance. And so we're working on this, like to have a display taxi clearance. And we're even thinking of an auto taxi function. And the last thing we're working on is the last ditch prevention, collision prevention, is what we call the SURF A function that we're working on with Honeywell. And basically, this function is to prevent a collision to happen on a runway. So it gives you a little bit in the manner of a TCAS. It's based on timing and on ADS-B, so that needs cooperation between aircraft. But basically, it gives the pilot a warning that either when it takes off, an aircraft is about to enter the runway. Either you're in approach and an aircraft who's supposed to cross is going to be one that the aircraft is on final and the other one that the aircraft is about to cross. So there are plenty of configurations to warn the pilot that there is another aircraft that is supposed to enter the runway. But the decision, unlike the TCAS, is left to the pilots, because we've seen, at least on one occasion, there was a runway incursion, an aircraft was on the takeoff roll, and the first officer was the pilot flying, and he wanted to abort. And if they had done so, they would have hit the other aircraft, and the captain took over one toga, and they passed over the crossing traffic. So that saved the day, and it was the human the human decision experience that saved the day. And so for this function, the final decision to either go around, stop the aircraft, etc., will be left to the pilot. But at least he will have a warning that another aircraft is on a runway or about to enter the runway.
That's great news, Jan, because we've seen with TCAS the great safety advancement it brought. It's time to bring more or less the same concept on the ground and to clear a little bit the fog, to give eyes to the aircraft to see through the fog, so through the complexity around the airport, and to give indeed this awareness to the crews and helping them to make the right decisions.
At the end, I mean, if we look at the barriers, and you ask the question if we may have too many barriers or something, we, from my perspective, should not forget that we have a great variety of airports. And we are not always talking about very complex airports with multiple runways or crossing runway constellations, but we also have minor airports, medium airports, only one runway, a more or less simple layout, one parallel taxiway maybe, and even there are happening runway incursions sometimes. So if we talk about barriers, we should not only look at these very complex airports which have very sophisticated technical means, like we have at Frankfurt or at Munich. They are very on the top-notch technical systems to prevent that. But at the end, there are other airports which are also served by air traffic services, and they do not have that many barriers. And so we come back to the human again at the end, who is there to make decisions and to look over the system.
Francesco, Malpensa is one of them, and Linate perhaps not falling right behind.
Yeah, we manage,
and we have a history when it comes to runway incursion.
Yeah, we have. He was talking about the things happens also in a simple airport. Linate is one of them. 23 years ago, on 8 October 2001, we had one of the bad accidents in Europe, and related to a runway incursion during fog. It is a very big event for Milano, but for the whole aviation community, and every day we try to learn something. I've passed in the last 20 years, in every training course I've been, everybody speak about Linate, because it's a very, and it's good, because it's a very major event and we have all to learn about that. Linate nowadays is completely a new airport compared to the one was in 2001, and I think that humans need to be assisted by infrastructure and maintenance and all possible system we have to avoid errors, or that system that can detect possible errors and do not induce in critical situations such as runway incursions. For example, we had one taxiway, the taxiway involved in the accident, that was two ways. So we decided to remove the two ways condition, is a one way now. And since it was again prone to error, because in the other part of the runway there was a continuation of this taxiway, we took decision to demolish the second part. So now also the pilot is no longer prone to ask for a shortcut, because the taxi time is be the same. So following the standard route is the best solution. We then introduce microwaves detection, stop bars 24 hours per day, which are a great help, especially in fog. You see a series of red light on and you have to stop. And we also introduce a system that constantly monitors the state of the lights. So if one light is off, is immediately assessed by maintenance control room, and they decide if we can operate with this lamp off or need to be immediately lit again. We then introduce also to support the air traffic control in knowing who is where, also the ADSB for all the vehicles that are running on the runway and on taxiways, so it can be easily detected at any point of their activity. I have already talked about CCTV, which are great help. And the last one is not strictly related to runway incursion, but is a wildlife monitoring system, which supports also, again, for the decision making or giving the aircraft the takeoff clearance with birds on runway, yes or no. We got this monitor, and if in case that something is wrong in the middle of the runway, we immediately know that no way, and we have to scaring them before returning to operation. So our duty as an airport is prepare the field and for a smooth operation to assist pilots and our airlines to operate well and to reduce the number of error, or to contain, in case someone making an error, to contain the threat.
Thank you very much, Francesco. A very interesting concept of runway incursion by nature. That is, I think, even more complex in terms of regulating and policing that. But also to the point that you made about not just telling humans don't make mistakes, but also taking into account that humans are prone to the error because that's how we are built, and avoid or giving them scenario or environments that are less prone to invite mistakes to be made, like the one with one way only, rather than trying to police traffic in a two-way system. In terms of deploying all this technology, this is certainly great. But to the point of Michel, this will not be feasible at the same time across the entire world of aviation, not in Europe and not across the globe. And this brings me to you, Janos. You're flying to so many destinations. You're flying to Malpensa, you're flying to Iași, and you're flying from very complex and very well-equipped aerodromes to some that are really a bit of concrete, some markings, and some lighting. How do you cope with all these differences?
Yeah, definitely. This is a challenging topic, as you are aware, and you mentioned we're flying across Europe. And even beyond, from north to the south, from east to the west. And we are facing with quite different airports in environment, in infrastructure, in layout, and so on and so on. And this diversity, these differences basically are requiring flexibility. And again, who can be flexible? The humans. So basically, most of the time, again, we have to rely on pilots to handle these situations, these differences. Of course, we are supporting as much as we can. We are creating very thorough airport briefings for them with pre-identified threats. They can discuss during the threat and error management-based briefing. They can use this avoid, trap, mitigate model as well to deal with these threats. But at the end, again, they are there and they have to do their job. What I would like to mainly highlight here that year ago, 2 years ago, we also identified what you, for example, mentioned, that of course they are focused on bigger airports where there are complex taxiways, they are preparing for it, so they are very vigilant. But what we realized that they might not that vigilant and aware at simple airports, or even what we realized that we had some ground movement errors, luckily no runway incursion and all this stuff, but ground movement errors when they took the wrong taxiway. At the end of the day, at their home base, relatively smaller airport, so not a very complex airport. How we tackled this, basically we have been contacted our CRM team, crew resource management team, and actually we provided them all this information, and actually they added this topic from human factor point of view to our yearly crew resource management training, and actually this is one of the methods how we are trying to tackle this issue. But definitely this is challenging, and actually pilots should adopt most of the time to the circumstances, whether it's in weather related, it's airport related, procedure related, and so on and so on. So this requires a lot of flexibility, of course, knowledge and training from them and from our side as well.
So continuous learning, continuous improving, and also maximizing the plus or the added value that the human brings. It's at the heart of the solution, and an operator will always have to rely on.
A couple of things come to my mind listening to my colleagues here. For a while we have the EASA runway safety team. It's composed of something like 8 subject matter experts across the house, because we consider runway incursion problem being a multidisciplinary, multifaceted phenomenon that we holistically need to tackle. What we hear is from Francesco, for example, I mean, the numbers that you mentioned, they seem to be quite compelling, no? To get down by 50%. Okay, you have a legacy in your particular place, so you have a specific attention to this, but apparently there's a lot of for the others to learn into that. So, and I mentioned before on your question, can we do more as a regulator? Yes, this is probably a good example where we can send over a team to learn and to spread the word at European level what good experiences you have done, not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of training and SOPs that you apparently have changed. Another question that I had was, sorry, Jan, you spoke about SURF A. How far away are we down the road from a certifiable solution? What would be your best guess here?
Yeah, we give like a 3 years time frame.
3 years?
Yes.
Because we have to bear in mind whatever we do in Europe, may safeguard us in Europe, but effectively our aircraft and airlines are flying beyond Europe, right? So it would be a good thing to have a ground independent solution as well to complement. And then another thing, if I may, you asked about, do we possibly have too many barriers in place? Can we make a comparison with other sectors? For example, in the automotive world, we have, for the last 10, 15 years, we have all kinds of driver assistance systems. No? We have blind spot detection in the mirrors. We have lane assist when you have this shaking thing at the steering wheel. Even the fatigue detection. I personally got a bit scared when I had this the first time because I didn't know how would the car know that I'm fatigued. So it's a combination, a collection of additional barriers that have been put in place, and maybe there are comparison figures that we could also draw from this sector when comparing the accident numbers. I don't know. So I don't think we have too many barriers personally, and I think we should not discard and even promote the Surf A as a very promising new technology. The TCAS on the ground, I think, is something we need.
It's we're working on a solution with Honeywell, but because Honeywell has to adapt their software to Airbus aircraft, but it's based on ADS-B, so it can be deployed everywhere. And Honeywell, I'm sure, is working with Boeing as well on a compatible system to work with us and over lighter traffics.
Yeah.
And during the last intervention, also taxiway incursion were mentioned. Is something that come up during the last GAPRI when an airline make a presentation saying, we got a number of runway incursions and just below a bigger number of taxiway incursions that are sometimes underestimated. We started after this meeting, I've asked my team to start digging a little bit into taxiway incursions because this many times the same situation leading to the runway incursion leads to the taxiway incursion, which is a matter of surface. One is called runway, the other one is taxiway, but I mean, the human error or the ambiguous marking is absolutely the same. So just for the iceberg safety point, we will start looking also into taxiway incursions because it's something that we need to investigate and to do not underestimate.
Thank you very much. Excellent discussion. So there's a lot of potential from technology to be there to assist the human there, be it on the ground, be it in the control tower, be it in the cockpit. All they have their pluses and their minuses. It's clear that one size does not fit all, and they will be we will be hard pressed to find that magic bullet that perhaps is never around. And since we're speaking now about a lot about situational awareness and cutting-edge technology, but one of the tools to enable situational awareness was communication. And if you look at communication today, it's not that cutting edge as what we've done, voice over radio, for 100 years. At the same time, the environment where we are communicated has been tremendously complexified in terms of the operations out there. The frequencies are saturated, everybody is rushing for time. Is communication now becoming a weak barrier or even a latent threat to rely on the communication means of today as a means to give us that situational awareness that we all need to combat and mitigate runway incursions?
I would like to come back to training then from the EDCO side, because this is a crucial point of learning RT, using RT, and really put stress on as well the hearbacks and readbacks. You know, this is one of the major points from our perspective. But we are as well working on AI again, voice recognition systems which should help us. This was said earlier ago, that voice recognition. Mikhaili said that, yes, voice recognition can be used, of course, during training to maybe substitute like pseudo pilots or something, which we are as well researching on, but it could be a tool as well in the future, maybe to help avoiding readback, hearback errors. And this is, as long as we stick to this technology and we are not moving to something else, just, I don't know, texting, maybe, or what else, as long as we speak and hear, there's this possibility of doing these errors. And if there is a kind of assisting system that recognizes what was said and what was the answer and matches this and tries to then alert either the pilot or the EDCO that there is a mismatch, that would be a help maybe.
From the airport point of view, we got the communication over radio is something that our teams are currently used to communicate when entering or exiting runways and taxiways. And we are seriously looking, and we required a safety assessment to an external consultant for English proficiency that is going to be required to our members or staff. And the point is that we start from the point that in Italy, less than 10% of people is able to good speaking in English. We are good for anything, but many things, but English is not not our point. And looking also at our staff, which is not old, I would say, but is over the half of their working life, they are less prone to learn another language. So we will arrive sooner or later to a paradox. Do we need to acquire good talents for English language or a good maintenance guy? Which one we have to choose? And the other point is that if we operate everybody on one single frequency, we probably saturate something that is already saturated, and we can go again into possible additional messages and additional errors. And so we are going to introduce a little bit of more risk if everybody are on the same frequency. And if on another track, I mean, we will keep and continue for the national language. We extended the scope of the national language proficiency because speaking Italian is more or less okay for everybody, but speaking Italian on a frequency into an airport on a high congested runway is another thing. So we are digging into that to use it for more extensive use, the national proficiency language, but we have some doubt, and we will ask for the derogation for the English one, because we see many additional threat and risk in there for the moment instead of benefits.
That's a very good point, Francesco. And you may know that EASA has commissioned a study called 111, one language, one frequency, one runway, to exactly look at the safety benefits, but at the same time to also assess whether there's any potential for risk export. Because on the face value, it's very inviting. Everybody speaks the same language when it comes to the same runway. Looking at Haneda, they were communicating on different frequency, and therefore they didn't know who was where. But at the same time, it can create undesired side effects, and they can come with higher risk as the problem that you are trying to solve, saturation, availability of that level of proficiency is an important discussion to be had. Sascha, you're also an avid GA enthusiast and an aerobatics pilot, and when we have these conferences and panels and discussion, we tend to think about the big boys, the Airbus flyer and the Malpensas of this world. But we share the airspace and the runways and the taxiways, not only with the heavy metals, but also the little ones are there and trying to get to where they want to go. How is this risk being perceived in that community? And is this adding to the risk by having the little ones speaking the national language, flying low level in this very complex environment?
Well, I'm a nice weather weekend flyer.
All right.
So when I jump around with my little Mickey Mouse plane in Colonian skies, often in the CTR, there's certain things I observe. I have fellow German GA pilots that use the CTR, and the Colonian ATCOs are very, very easygoing folks. Okay, it's not the busiest airport during daytime. They have the cargo business during night mostly. So they are quite accommodating. But you hear on the radio huge variants of standards in terms of phraseology being used. It's kind of a right to use German language, of course, like you have in Italy, so it's probably a similar thing. Interestingly, when tuning in the tower frequency, the vehicles that the drivers of the vehicles, they all speak English in standard phraseology. So somehow this seems to be a non-issue here, at least in Cologne, probably not everywhere. I think risk is being added, and Janos is probably more qualified to say from a commercial perspective. When you use smaller secondary airports, which is also used by GA guys, mixed IFR VFR,
Class E airspace.
yeah, yes. Okay, that now we're going a bit away from runway incursion only, but mid-air collision risk including, yeah. When I look back, and I tend to always compare the two worlds, and do I feel appropriately prepared using a complex platform such as, I don't know, multi-runway? Have I, with my PPL training, with my basic training and my radio telephony training back then, 25, 30 years ago, whenever it was, I cannot remember having been adequately prepared during my PPL training for using large airports, in particular with taxi clearances, in particular with hotspots identification, and the importance to put on that in order to prevent myself from doing a runway incursion. And there is no recurrent training to that end. We have our biannual flight check, if you want, yeah, and then you do a bit of stall and steep curve, steep turns, but you don't typically go into, you mentioned it, the increased complexity to train that repetitively. There is a natural deterrent, I would say, for the bigger airports, at least in Europe, by means of high landing fees to keep the small guys out, so you wouldn't typically use that. But if you go to the US, for example, it's free of charge. So and you find everything there. Even at ramps like in Miami International, you find a Piper 28. Yeah, so you have, and again, the European airline may face a problem there. So we cannot afford to only look at Europe. So I think this is another element we have to look into, how to better prepare the GA community when using those airports. And I don't know, we have these secondary airports. Yeah? You have a number of them, I would guess, in your system as well. So Janos, maybe what do you do there?
You mentioned quite a lot of aspects, and indeed we are flying to these airports. I would say there is no specific issue from, at least at Wizz regarding this aspect. What I would like to highlight here that, and actually going back to the original question, maybe a bit voice over radio, whether we are still using RT. Issue is that basically there is no, not even backup, but no second layer. So whatever it goes on the radio, and actually that's going back to the same with the human factor and human behavior. There is not too much confirmation. Okay, we are reading it back, maybe there is some interference meanwhile, and then pilots just using confirmation bias. Yeah, definitely this was for us, this was the clearance. I don't want to say they are too lazy, it's human factor, human behavior, how they are accepting the clearance, whether they might not 100% sure. And there is no second layer of defense for a possible, if you're going back to runway incursions. And also connecting to technology, what I would be interested in, mainly it's to Jan, but I'm pretty sure that they already considered this, but this is just my idea, came to my mind. Whenever we are receiving a lineup clearance, takeoff clearance or landing clearance, there should be someone else, a second note to the pilots, let's say, even a light or some notification in the cockpit which confirms you really have the clearance, because so far, basically, it's only on the radio and more or less that's it. And then if you are taking it granted, then you are taking it off or lining up to the runway, and actually then you are already close to an occurrence incident, whatever. So have this ever been considered to, I don't know, have a specific light, but this is just my idea in the cockpit, which confirms you have a lineup clearance, you have a takeoff or landing clearance?
Well, Today for this, we just have the two pilots cross-checking each other to make sure that they have understood the good thing. But I know that there are some lighting solutions like blocking by red lights and giving the green light when you clear to line up. So there are other solutions. But in the aircraft itself, I have no knowledge of such a solution studied. Yeah.
But I think that there's quite potential in terms of voice recognition to, let's say, codify the clearances and make them available to the crews rather than relying only on voice and readbacks.
Yeah, it's what we call voice to text.
Yes.
It's something we're working on as well, but the main thing is for the long clearances, taxi clearances. They're not really for the takeoff clearance, but that could work also. That could work.
It has to learn Italian, you heard.
Yeah. Two things, Sascha, that you said were ringing a bell. First, I recognize that you find my colleagues at Cologne Tower were handsome guys. Thank you. Yeah. So I bring this European perspective back to them. And but the other thing was maybe one thing you said. When it comes to the airport operations, on the frequency. I'm not an expert in aerodrome regulations, but Francesco, you could maybe help me out with that. But I think there's an obligation for you as an airport to train your staff, at least in the future, to speak English on this frequency. Yeah. So, I mean, this is maybe a provocative question, but why is it then allowed to use national language for your view of our colleagues in GA? I mean, this is a regulatory question, yeah? So the airports, they're investing a lot in their staff to train them in this language, to use English on the ground frequency when driving vehicles. And then there's the GA pilot on a controlled aerodrome. So the question is, why is it still allowed to use national language on a controlled aerodrome? Mm-hmm. Should this maybe be changed? Is this a part that could be changed?
I can answer that because the mandate is coming in 26. It's actually the challenge that Francesco is mentioning in meeting that mandate in terms of having some of all the folks that are driving on the airports being able to get the level of proficiency, level 4, which is not the highest, but also not the lowest. So it comes with its fair share of challenges in some states more than in others. That is something to continue to put a lot of attention going forward. Maybe one last question before opening the floor for the questions coming from the audience. That is very close to the topic of human factors. I think one of the first things you think when it comes to your mind when you think about human factors is fatigue. Fatigue for pilots, fatigue for ATCOs. EASA has finalized a study on ATCO fatigue. It's quite well understood and regulated for those categories of personnel. But how about all the other humans in the systems? They fatigue as well. And then perhaps they do not receive the same regulatory importance in our system, but they should be seen as, from a safety risk management perspective, of course, this is an important cluster of risk. Do we have the right understanding and the right mitigations, and we're giving the right importance to this topic of fatigue, also in the context of runway incursion? I'll start with you, Janos, because this is a constant challenge for operators and pilots.
Definitely this is one of the key topics which we are dealing with in the past few years, let's say, fatigue for the pilots, for the cabin crew as well. And I don't want to say it's a never-ending story, but we are still in the journey, and actually no idea where we are, but actually moved quite a lot in the previous years. We built up quite a sophisticated fatigue reporting system, which is not only meaning a simple fatigue report that they are not taking the duty, but we have 4 subtypes of fatigue reports. We are even able to report future roster issues in advance, and then actually if we are validating those, our colleagues are validating those, and when actually it really looks like then the roster is demanding, then we are changing the roster in advance and possibly trying to avoid fatigue. Of course, if this is not the case, or they are still feeling they are not fit for the duty, they can still report fatigue for those days, but hopefully we can try to avoid this scenario and also that scenario if they are taking the duty when they are not enough rested. What we also developed in the previous year is a so-called fatigue risk management support program. And then we also involved external experts from sleep clinics, and then they are supporting our crew either on the voluntary or on the less voluntary way, depending on the reports they are submitting. So they are delivering online sessions to our crew members, really doctors who are experienced, dozens of years of experience in this area. And this is something new with what we tried. Nevertheless, we are just implementing a so-called alertness survey. I'm pretty sure that many other airlines already have such a feature. That means they are filling out this alertness survey during and after their duty. We are collecting this information, and basically we are able to get data, route-specific, rotation-specific data, which means then we are able to modify those routes which are more demanding for the crew members, causing fatigue, or actually their alertness level maybe dropping to a lower level at the end of the duty. So a lot of data what we are gathering, a lot of data what we have. It's a huge work, and actually still it's a long journey until we have a finalized setup, and actually until we can say that we are where we want to be with regards of fatigue. But this is one of the key topic what we are working on.
So it's recognized in an area that deserves a lot of importance, investment, and getting more factual and getting data and acting upon. This is the solution that you're advocating. How is it in the control tower? You have the busy ones and not so busy ones.
Yeah, sure. This is something that we should then have a close look at. Of course, it's not that issue. You talk about towers, control towers. It's not that issue in our ACCs and the centers. They are working a lot of people, even during night shifts or 24/7. So you always have people around you. These are two different things. It's one thing when you come to work after a short night, I don't know, and you're fatigued from the first moment on. This is one thing of your personal lifestyle maybe, and the other thing is when working during night shifts and this fatigue starts arousing during the night, and this is more a problem in the towers. Yeah, as you said, of course, in the smaller towers where you maybe only have 2 colleagues working during nighttime, or even there's a single person operation. Sometimes during night shift when there's no regular traffic for a longer time. And this is a thing that we really have to take a close look, and it's always a balancing between what you allow people to do normally during the work and what you're not allowing them to do, like, I don't know, reading books or reading some journals or whatever during daytime. This is, of course, when you're working logged in your position, this is not allowed normally. But then it's the question, are you doing this, are you opening this during nighttime under very specific conditions when there's no traffic on your frequency, when there's no traffic expected within the next, I don't know, 30, 60 minutes maybe, that you say, okay, under these circumstances, you are allowed to do some, I don't know, private reading or something. Not looking on your iPad or mobile phone. This is not allowed for other reasons, for security and technical reasons. It's not allowed to have these devices in the control room, but when it comes to reading a newspaper or a book, you should then have a look at if you are able to allow this to your staff. But this is again a negotiation thing, and then comes where's the boundary, and where's up to which time and under which specific conditions can you do this? And this is kind of negotiation thing as well. Again with the unions, which is very strong with our colleagues.
I think with fatigue, it accumulates, and indeed low level of arousal or of alertness can be fatiguing. Doing nothing is fatiguing as well. And I think that's also valid for pilots. Sometimes you cross the Atlantic, nothing happens for a long time. How are we getting ready to avoid this type of fatigue to accumulate for low levels of alertness? And are the new aircraft able to monitor human performance like Sascha's car?
Yeah, well, in the frame of our latest studies on MCO, etc., we thought of a human monitoring system based on high activity, and so we're working on functions to monitor a little bit the the human, and eventually to give him wake-up calls, and just like you have on your car sometimes, it tells you to get on the wheel. We're working on something of the kind, like to prevent the pilot from falling asleep completely, and telling him that it's a bit dizzy and not focused.
Electroshocks in the seat.
If they fall asleep. There is no.
What do you do if the system says then you take a break now, like in the car?
Just have a coffee.
But for pilots and for airports, this is a regulated environment. But Francesco, airport workers, those are not regulators from a fatigue or duty time perspective. Not that much. There is some high-level regulation for mobile workers, but in terms of managing fatigue, there's a lot more than that. How do you see this?
Yeah, you're right. We got only the national labor or health and safety regulation that is quite strict, but it regulates all workers and not only for the airport. We build up a department that is managing some constraints and the roster for everybody in the airport. Everybody is also allowed to swap duties. He can ask the swap of the duty, but he has to be approved by the rostering department that assess based on maximum working hours, minimum day off, minimum rest, and maximum also night shift, and the balance of the overtime required, and then he can approve or not. So this is a part of normal, and then we got special tasks such as security screeners or maintenance on runway because they normally occur at night time. So we classify the risk as high, and this task is assigned not with the same frequency of the others. So the fatigue, we monitor the fatigue, and the people will be well rested and fit to perform their duties or supposed to do so, and at the same time they are assigned with other roles in like daily shift, or for the security like ground patrolling or the security control room, not screening directly, which is a high energy activity and is highly fatigue prone, I would say. In addition, this led us to reduce the absenteeism of people because they were fatigued. And in addition, we started to investigate fatigue, despite it's not mandatory for both national and aviation regulation. For airport, well, we started looking into every event if fatigue is a factor. Because if you damage an aircraft, were you fatigued, or there were some items that lead us thinking about your fatigue, and something that is...
This is really very reassuring to see that fatigue is given there's importance even outside of a regulated environment. And you also measure success rates, and the fact that is also leading to efficiency gains as a result is testimony that you're on the right track in approaching that. I think we can continue for a long time, but it will be unfair to the audience that put us those interesting questions, and I would like to call these questions for us to have a look at those. And the first one from Mikolaj Firles is: following the collision between the Dash and the 350 in Haneda, are the current runway incursion prevention regulation plans to be revised? I think we owe it to everyone that we learn from everything, and especially from events of such magnitude. Certainly, we have to factor in and take all the learnings that have to be taken. Rule making and change of regulation is one of the tools that we have. I think we don't need to always rely on changing the rules if those are fit for purpose. But we've seen already there's quite a lot of merit in terms of looking for technological advancements that will help with the reduction of workload. We're raising situational awareness. And sometimes rules and regulatory mandates are needed to make those happen. If we were to take the survey, assuming that all the promise will be delivered at the end of the day, that will be an interesting topic to discuss out how this will be then coming from the development phase into the cockpits of today and of tomorrow, and all the other elements that we have discussed. So might be that we will certainly factor all these learnings into future regulatory activities. A full revamp, I don't think it's now on the drawing board. As Sascha mentioned, we are not reinventing the wheel when it comes to runway incursion. A lot of great work has been done already under the umbrella of the APRI and the GAPRI. So that's already a very solid starting point. The next one is for Francesco and Michael. It's in large airports, distraction also occur from unnecessary frequency chatter. Would voice procedures change be useful?
Well, if I take a first word on that, I think from my perspective, at least the standard voice procedures that we use as ATC, they are quite simplified and not really, I mean, there's not much unnecessary thing on that. So they're really focusing on the main things. But nevertheless, of course, we should take a look at this and take this serious. And we have all frequent meetings with our regulator in Germany with the BAF, and we have a working group there where we look at these voice procedures and talk about necessary changes if we identify any of them, which we hadn't done yet. So yeah, this could be a factor, but from my perspective, we did not have any occurrences in the last time where we could identify on a major airport frequency chatter as one of the factors.
But I guess you monitor for frequency congestion, and that could be a cause for it.
Yep.
I think that the item could be in the delivery frequency or in the ground, because in normally we have we just a few weeks ago we established the delivery frequency, which is managed by the airport operator in Malpensa, and many chat are requests of pushback and startup, which are not being able to approve because the slot is expired, or you don't have the flight plan approved, or many of these are chat that fill up the frequency. And in this case, we remove all of them, creating an additional frequency, which is a good thing for some point and a bad one for others, because there is an additional change of frequency. And we remove all the noise from the frequency, keeping the ground, the delivering ground, and the runway frequency only for the proper use, I would say.
All right. Next question, Sascha, for you. It's a great question, and it's how do we do the paradigm shift? One negative versus 1,000 successes. How we get the good stuff out and in practice to make it 1 out of 10,000.
Thank you, Rizan, for putting me on the spotlight for this question. Sorry to say, but I would probably point to my colleague Guillaume from our AI team to see what can be done here on our new topic in order to identify, because it's massive data mining, as you rightly say. But it's not limited to the discussion that we have here, right? It's a more holistic question, can be applied anywhere to identify latent threats as part of any SMS. Doesn't have to be runway incursion topics. So I don't have the golden answer here, I'm afraid. I must say I like the second one a lot.
But before you go to that, maybe I can come to your rescue, because I think the question is good, and it's an invitation for all of us to reflect on changing the way we think. For decades, we've been looking at identifying risk, mitigating, eliminating, putting barriers and more barriers. Sometimes we never pause to think whether this ever-growing number of barriers is still effective in its all concept, in the sense that all these layers on top of the layers are still required, and adding perhaps unnecessary complexity, which is a threat in itself. But at the same time, I think we can certainly learn to do that. It's called safety too, this new concept that is no longer looking at what goes wrong and try to fix that, but also looking at what goes well and trying to replicate that. And I will use the example Francesco gave us. They said, okay, we reduced runway incursions by 50%. I think that's where we need to start, is how did it work for them to do that? And how we can take that out of Malpensa and out of the next aircraft, other airports elsewhere. I think is linked to to the next question in terms of 60 airports out of 400 have this sophisticated technical means deployed. How can we make the others do that? So that is indeed something that goes in the same direction on how we can take what has been proven to work and make it work somewhere else. And I think here the solutions are manifold in terms of incentivizing safety rather than penalize underperformance, looking at pecuniary solution and an investment that will incentivize safety. And in the end, safety is also incentivized by increasing efficiency. Technology will be, the uptake of technology will happen not only because it gives you more safety, but it's also because it's giving you more efficiency. Will allow you to do more things, better things as a result. So technology for the sake of technology will be hard to sell. Technology with a clear outcome, I think, will be easily embraced. My dear panelists, we had a fantastic time, at least I did, and I really enjoy having you here and having such a great discussion. If I was to sum it up in just a few words, humans are here and are here to stay. They will do great things. They will make some errors every now and again. We need to make sure that do more of the former and less of the latter. So technology should be there to help the humans to do great things. Technology is there not to compete with the humans, but to help us working and deliver better safety, better efficiency. There's quite a lot of promise in terms of the solutions on runway incursions. And maybe this is the last push we need to have indeed a victory on this continuous struggle that we have for the past decades in terms of runway safety and runway incursion in particular. In terms of the colleagues in the audience, I hope you enjoyed the discussions, and thank you very much for the good questions we have received. So please join me and rock the house for the great people here that shared their experience with you, and I wish you all a very good and safe travel back to your places. Thank you very much.